My marriage, in inverted commas, with Jimmy Page, we only slept together once. And I can't remember what happened.
Robert Plant was born on August 20th, 1948, in West Bromwich, England, a grey industrial town where factories filled the sky with smoke and working-class families struggled to get by. His father was a strict civil engineer who wanted his son to follow a safe, respectable path with a steady job. But Robert's mother carried Romani blood and passed on a restless spirit that made the boy dream of something bigger than the ordinary life around him. Even as a child, Robert felt different from other kids. While his classmates played football in muddy factory yards, he wandered alone through foggy streets, humming to himself and listening for something others couldn't hear. He later said he felt the blues before he even understood what it was, like a hunger pulling at him that he couldn't shake. This wasn't just about music, but about freedom from the suffocating routine of his gray surroundings. When Robert was 10 years old, he discovered Elvis Presley, and it changed everything. For a boy who had only known drizzle and factory smoke, Elvis was like thunder and lightning. Robert would stand in front of his cracked bedroom mirror, copying Elvis's moves and telling himself that one day he would sing loud enough for the world to hear. Music became his sanctuary, the place where loneliness turned into power, and pain became fuel for his dreams. By his teenage years, Robert knew he was meant for something different. His father still hoped his son would get a safe office job, but Robert filled his notebooks with song lyrics instead of homework. Teachers noticed he was present in body, but absent in spirit. He spent his time listening to blues legends like Muddy Waters and Howling Wolf. When he first heard the blues, he said it felt like someone had cracked open his chest and poured his own feelings back into him. At 16, against his father's wishes, Robert left home to chase his dream of making music. He took whatever jobs he could find, working in factories, driving delivery trucks, all while singing in pubs and dance halls where cigarette smoke clung to the walls and audiences were often more interested in drinking than listening. To pursue music in the working-class Midlands was to invite ridicule and risk being seen as foolish. But the boy who had grown up in silence had finally found his voice, and he held on to it like his life depended on it. When Robert was 18, he met John Bonham, another restless young man from the Midlands who played drums with the same desperate need to escape their gray surroundings. They became like brothers, playing anywhere that would have them. Wedding halls, working men's clubs, half-empty theaters where their only applause came from echoes. They were still nobodies, still dismissed by the respectable world, but together they created a sound that was raw and powerful. Robert spent years struggling in obscurity, moving from one forgotten band to another. Each group felt fragile, falling apart almost as soon as it showed promise. He earned pennies as a performer, living on bread and cheese, but he sang as if his life depended on it. Because it did. Every rejection only made him more determined. Every cruel laugh only strengthened his resolve. He was learning to turn hunger into music and pain into power. The breakthrough came in 1968 when Led Zeppelin formed. Robert's voice was unlike anything the world had heard, raw, soaring, and primal. Within months, he transformed from an unknown young man into the face of a global phenomenon. By the early 1970s, Led Zeppelin had become the biggest band on the planet, selling out stadiums and breaking records. Robert stood at the center of it all, his golden hair blazing under the lights, earning him the nickname, the Golden God. But fame came with a terrible pizza. Pesos, rice. The higher Robert rose, the heavier the burdens became. Every concert had to be bigger than the last. Every performance had to live up to impossible expectations. The worship that elevated him also suffocated him. He couldn't show weakness or be human. He had to be the Golden God at all times, and it was a crown he never asked for, but could never take off. The physical toll was brutal. Between 1969 and 1973, Zeppelin toured almost without pause. Robert's voice, which was wild and unrestrained, was pushed to its limits night after night. He sang through fevers and infections, as if missing one show would destroy the myth. His vocal cords bore scars that fans couldn't see but that caused him real pain. He would wake up wondering if he had any voice left at all. While millions of fans worshipped Zeppelin, many music critics dismissed them as loud and pointless. For Robert, who poured his soul into every song, this criticism was devastating. He lived in two worlds, adored by the people but condemned by the cultural gatekeepers. The more he gave, the less he felt understood. In August 1975, tragedy struck when Robert's car crashed during a family vacation in Greece. His ankle and elbow were shattered, confining him to a wheelchair for months. But what consumed him wasn't his own pain. It was seeing his wife and children injured and shaken. The man who could command stadiums with a single scream felt helplessly small in the wreckage, praying that his family would survive. The accident canceled Zeppelin's massive American tour and reminded Robert how quickly everything he cared about could be taken away. The cruelest blow came in 1977 when Robert received a phone call that shattered his world. His 5-year-old son, Karak, had fallen ill suddenly and died before Robert could return from Zeppelin's American tour. The loss was unbearable. Robert later said simply, "I lost my boy. Nothing else mattered." Glory could fill stadiums, but it couldn't fill the silence of his child's empty room. The grief was overwhelming. Robert questioned whether he could ever sing again, whether standing on stage was somehow a betrayal of his lost son. He withdrew from the world, and friends said he was drowning in sorrow. The band that had once meant everything to him suddenly felt meaningless. He sat in the stillness of night, staring at toys that would never be played with again, surrounded by a silence that roared louder than any crowd. The death of Karak didn't just break Robert's heart, it slowly destroyed his marriage to Maureen. They had been together since before the fame, through the hungry years and the rise to stardom. She had been his anchor through everything. But grief affected them differently. Robert threw himself into music to escape the pain, while Maureen was left alone with her mother's grief. The distance between them grew, and by the late 1970s, their marriage was falling apart. It wasn't from lack of love, but from the unbearable weight of their shared tragedy. Just as Robert was struggling with personal loss, fate struck again. On September 25, 1980, John Bonham died. For over a decade, Bonham had been Robert's musical brother, the thunderous heartbeat of Zeppelin. They had grown up together, escaped the Midlands together, and conquered the world together. Bonham's death wasn't just the loss of a friend, it was the death of the family Robert had built when his own seemed broken. Within weeks, Led Zeppelin was finished too. By 1980, Robert Plant had lived through both sides of fame, the intoxicating glory of being worshipped by millions, and the devastating punishment of losing everything that truly mattered. He stood in a silence more suffocating than any he had known as a child, wondering if he had the strength to continue. For a time, Robert considered leaving music forever. He thought about becoming a teacher, trading the roar of crowds for the quiet of classrooms. Music had already taken so much from him, his youth, his voice, his child, his best friend. But within the wreckage, a small flame still burned. The same hunger that had carried a lonely boy through the gray streets was still there. In 1982, Robert released his first solo album, Pictures at 11. It wasn't Zeppelin, and he never pretended it was. The thunderous epics were gone, replaced by songs that showed his vulnerability. Critics were harsh and fans were divided. Some dismissed him as a relic chasing a ghost he could never catch, but others heard something new, a voice stripped of myth, singing not to conquer, but to survive. The struggle was difficult. At concerts, fans constantly shouted for Stairway to Heaven, a song tied to memories too painful to relive. Every new song was measured against the impossible weight of his past. Yet night after night, he sang anyway, not because he believed he could escape Zeppelin's shadow, but because he refused to let grief silence him. Through the 1980s and 1990s, Robert slowly rebuilt his career. His voice was changing too, no longer the untamed scream of youth, but something deeper and more weathered, carrying truths that only survival can teach. Albums like The Principle of Moments and Fate of Nations showed an artist learning to turn absence into melody. The real breakthrough came in 2007 when Robert, at age 59, surprised everyone with Raising Sand, his collaboration with bluegrass artist Alison Krauss. The album was haunting and tender, weaving folk and blues into something timeless. It won the Grammy for Album of the Year, proving that Robert wasn't just surviving his past but transcending it. Today, at 77, Robert Plant lives quietly in the English countryside near the Wyre Forest. His net worth is estimated at over $200 million from Zeppelin royalties and his solo career, but he lives modestly. He drives vintage cars chosen for memory rather than status, and resides in a simple home where birdsong has replaced the roar of crowds. His surviving children, N, Carmen, Logan, and Jesse Lee, have become his anchor. Logan founded a successful brewery, while Carmen became a dancer and artist. Robert is also a grandfather now, finding joy in family gatherings and quiet moments. But the memory of Karak is always there, an empty chair at every reunion, a silence that no laughter can completely fill. Robert's later years have been marked by gentle generosity. He quietly sponsors programs for homeless individuals, donates to hospitals, and supports his childhood football club. These acts aren't announcements of wealth, but whispers of a man who has learned what truly matters. The man who once stood as the untouchable golden god of rock now walks with the wisdom of someone who has survived devastating loss. His voice, once a primal scream, has become something rarer, a testament to resilience. He learned that greatness isn't measured by volume, but by the quiet act of carrying love forward, even after loss. Robert Plant's story is ultimately about transformation, from a lonely boy in industrial England to the voice of a generation, then through unimaginable tragedy to something deeper and more human. His journey teaches us that memory itself can be a legacy, and sometimes the most profound music isn't what we hear, but what we remember. In honoring Robert Plant, we remember not just a god of rock, but a man who gave us a map through the darkness of life's cruelest moments.